The royal court of Seattle glittered like a blade. Crystal chandeliers, black marble, 1,000 predators dressed in silk pretending they weren't hungry. At the center on the obsidian dais sat the Night King, Sebastian Blackwood, his mask on, his body slumped in the infamous chrome wheelchair, the perfect tragedy for a perfect room. Beside him stood the official bride, Lady Serafina Valcourt, wrapped in silver lace and venom. Her smile was polished, but her eyes were shaking with ownership. Her hand rested on the king's shoulder like a claim. And then the chaos began. A scream ripped through the hall. A courtier pointed. Her skin, look! Audrey froze mid-step at the base of the dais, still in a simple black dress that suddenly felt too thin for the cold. She had been dragged here as a guest, a nobody placed at the edge of history. But the air changed the moment she entered, as if the whole castle inhaled. Something burned under her collarbone. A dark mark surfaced on her skin, ink black, alive, forming into a symbol like a wolf biting a bat. The room erupted, chairs scraped back, goblets shattered. A dozen vampires stood at once. Priests of the enclave hissed prayers. Guards reached for silver spears. Serafina's smile cracked into a snarl. That mark is forbidden. The High Chancellor stepped forward, robes swaying like a funeral banner. Your Majesty, the bond sigil has appeared. The court fell into a tight, starving silence. Audrey's breath came sharp and small. She didn't understand their words, only their faces, fear, hunger, disgust, and something worse, reverence. The king's head tilted. The dark lenses of his mask aimed directly at her as if the entire world narrowed into one point. The wheelchair's metal arm twitched, not mechanical, not weak, alive. The chandeliers flickered. A low vibration rolled through the floor like a beast turning in its sleep. Serafina gripped the king's shoulder harder. This is a trick, she snapped. A human cannot carry that. Audrey's throat tightened, human, like a curse, like a joke. The Chancellor raised his staff. Bring her forward. Two guards grabbed Audrey's arms. Their hands were cold, too strong. She stumbled, heels slipping on black stone, and the humiliation hit fast, everyone watching her like she was meat dressed in perfume. Don't touch her, a voice rasped. The sound did not come from the Chancellor. It came from the throne, from the crippled king. The entire court flinched. Even Serafina's fingers paused. Sebastian's synthesized voice cut through the room like a wire. Remove your hands. The guards hesitated. Serafina leaned down, lips close to the mask. My king, she purred, loud enough for Audrey to hear, don't embarrass me. The wheelchair moved forward 1 inch, only one, but the court felt it. The guards released Audrey like she'd turned into fire. She almost fell. Almost. She caught herself, chin lifting, refusing to collapse. Serafina's eyes sharpened with jealousy so bright it looked like rage. Audrey's mark pulsed again, hot, painful, and the chandeliers dimmed as if the castle itself was obeying her skin. A court noble whispered, horrified, the fortress is responding to her. Another whispered back, only queens do that. Audrey's stomach dropped. Queens, no, she was nobody. She was a spare, a girl who survived because someone else was loved more. Sebastian's mask turned slightly, tracking her like a predator tracking a heartbeat. Come closer, he commanded. Audrey didn't move. The court waited, breath held. Serafina laughed, sharp and brittle. She's trembling. Audrey swallowed. I'm not trembling. Serafina stepped off the dais with perfect grace, moving toward Audrey like a beautiful blade. Do you know what you are doing? Serafina asked softly, sweet enough to poison. You are standing in a room where the wrong breath can kill you. Audrey lifted her eyes. Then stop breathing so loud. Gasps shot through the court. Serafina's smile vanished. Her face twisted. You stupid little, Sebastian's power reacted. Not words, not a threat. The air itself deepened. The torches flared blue. A line of shadow peeled up the wall behind the throne like a living creature. The king didn't move from his chair, but the entire court felt his rage like pressure in their skulls. Serafina froze mid-step. Audrey felt it too, felt the power surge like a storm leaning toward her, protecting her without being asked. A whispered voice from a balcony. He never reacts. Another. He only reacts to her. Serafina turned back toward the throne, panic flashing behind her eyes. My king, she said quickly, voice shaking now, this is illegal. The bond sigil without ceremony, this is rebellion. The Chancellor nodded grimly. It would destabilize the truce. Someone hissed the name that made the room tight. Lord Kai's. The moment that name hit the air, the court shifted like a pack sensing blood. Audrey saw him then, a tall man at the edge, blonde hair, cruel smile, eyes like polished ice. He didn't look surprised, he looked pleased. Lord Kais raised his goblet in a mock salute. "Congratulations, Blackwood," he called. "Your court just found its new scandal." Seraphina's breath hitched, her composure snapped into fury again. "This is his game," she spat. "He planted her." Audrey's mark flared, burning. She clutched her collarbone, pain shooting down her ribs. Sebastian's voice lowered, dangerous. "Brought her into my court." Silence. No one wanted to speak. Then from the gold doors, heels clicked like gunshots. Patricia Sterling entered like she owned the world, wrapped in white fur, diamonds bright as lies. And at her side, Jessica, glassy-eyed, wearing a ruby collar too tight around her throat. Audrey's blood iced. Patricia smiled at the room, then at Audrey like she was admiring a product. "My apologies," Patricia said smoothly. The girl wandered in. "You know how strays are." Audrey's jaw tightened. "You brought me?" Patricia's eyes sparkled. "Of course I did, it's your birthday gift." Seraphina's laugh came out broken. "A marked human stray in my court beside my king." She stepped closer to Audrey again, voice sharp with threat. "You'll be executed before midnight." Sebastian's wheelchair moved again, 2 inches this time, and Seraphina flinched as if struck. Audrey felt the king's attention on her like hands, not gentle, claiming, possessive. The chancellor whispered, "Your Majesty, the court demands clarity. Is she yours?" The question hit like a blade to Audrey's throat. Seraphina turned, eyes wide. "Answer him," she snapped at Sebastian. "Tell them I am your bride." Sebastian was silent for one long breath. Then the mask tilted toward Audrey. His voice turned low, intimate, violent with restraint. "Come here," he said. "Now." Audrey's feet moved before her fear could argue. The walk felt endless. Every eye followed her. Every whisper bit at her skin. When she reached the dais, she realized the throne was not offering safety. It was offering possession. Seraphina stepped between them, shaking. "You can't." Sebastian's gloved hand rose and touched Seraphina's wrist. Not hard, not cruel, just enough. Seraphina went still. Her lips parted in shock, as if she'd never been touched like that in her life. Sebastian's voice was quiet, but it shattered the room. "Move." Seraphina's eyes filled with hot tears of rage. She forced herself aside, trembling, humiliated in front of the entire court. Audrey stood at the edge of the throne, heart hammering, mark burning. Sebastian's hand lifted again. It hovered near Audrey's collarbone. He didn't touch. But the air reacted anyway, shadows tightening, torches bending, the castle listening. Audrey's breath caught. The king leaned closer, mask inches from her skin. So close she smelled him, rain, pine, and something darkly expensive. His voice dropped, meant only for her, yet the whole room felt it. "You're mine," he murmured. Seraphina made a choked sound like she'd been slapped. Lord Kai smiled wider. Patricia's eyes glittered with satisfaction. Audrey whispered back, voice shaking with anger, "I don't belong to anyone." Sebastian's gloved fingers finally touched the mark, one gentle press. Audrey gasped. The chandeliers exploded into brighter light, then snapped darker, as if the castle couldn't decide whether to worship or burn. Sebastian's chair jolted forward, and for a second, just a second, Audrey saw it. His legs tensed beneath the blanket, not dead, not ruined, alive. Her mind split open with fear. Seraphina saw it too, her breath went wild. "He's lying," she whispered, horrified. "He's been lying." Sebastian's head tilted, almost amused. And then publicly, clearly, he spoke to the court. "This girl is under my protection," he said. Seraphina snapped. "Protection is not marriage." Sebastian's voice sharpened. The court erupted again, shouts, arguments, panic. The chancellor slammed his staff. "Silence. If the bond sigil is true, the old laws apply. One marked, one king, one claim." Seraphina's face drained. "No," she whispered. "No, no." Patricia stepped forward, sweet as poison. "Then honor the old laws, Your Majesty. Take her, make it official, end the confusion." Audrey spun toward Patricia. "You did this." Patricia's smile widened. "I did what I had to do." Jessica's empty eyes flickered, and for a second she looked like she wanted to scream. Lord Kais lifted his goblet again. "Do it, Blackwood, claim her, or admit you've lost control." Sebastian's silence stretched. Then his hand closed around Audrey's wrist, not painful but inescapable. His power curled up her arm like heat. Audrey's knees almost buckled. He held her steady like he enjoyed how close she had to be to survive. Seraphina's voice cracked, truly unstable now. "If you do this, I will burn your court down." Sebastian turned his mask towards Serafina. The air went colder. "You'll try," he said calmly. Serafina's eyes filled with hatred and humiliation. "I was chosen," she hissed. "I earned that throne." Sebastian's voice went quiet, cruel in its restraint. "And yet the castle didn't answer you." He tightened his grip on Audrey's wrist just slightly. The mark flared again. The shadows moved like kneeling servants. The court watched, terrified. Sebastian leaned close to Audrey, voice low as a vow. "Smile," he murmured. "Let them fear you." Audrey swallowed hard, then lifted her chin. And she smiled, not sweet. Sharp, the court went silent, because the human girl standing beside the Night King looked like she belonged there. Patricia exhaled like victory. Kai's eyes narrowed, calculating. Serafina stared at Audrey like she wanted to tear her apart with her teeth. The Chancellor raised his staff again. "Then we proceed. By old law, the marked must be tested. A trial of blood. If she survives the king's proximity, the bond is undeniable." Audrey's heart slammed. Trial. Sebastian's gloved thumb brushed her pulse point, almost tender, almost cruel. "Don't faint," he whispered. "I like you conscious." Audrey's breath caught, heat rising under her skin, hate and something else she refused to name. The Chancellor stepped forward. "Bring them to the Crimson Circle." The court surged, hungry for spectacle. Serafina's smile returned, wrong and bright. "She won't survive," she said softly. "Humans break." Sebastian didn't look away from Audrey. "Then she won't be human for long," he said. And as the court dragged them toward the circle of blood-red marble, Audrey realized the worst truth. The monster on the throne wasn't her enemy. He was her door, and he was already closing it behind her. The Crimson Circle sat beneath the palace like a mouth. Red marble floor, iron chains hanging from the ceiling like old prayers. A ring of nobles formed around it, faces glowing with anticipation, eyes too bright. At the edge of the circle stood Serafina, perfectly placed, like she'd planned this moment for years. Her official bridal crown shimmered, but her hands shook so badly she hid them in her sleeves. Audrey stood inside the circle beside Sebastian's wheelchair, close enough to feel the cold metal, close enough to feel him, not the chair, him. His presence pressed against her senses like a storm trapped in skin. The Chancellor lifted a silver bowl filled with dark liquid. "Blood wine," he announced. "A truth catalyst. If the bond is false, the marked will convulse. If true, she will endure." Audrey's stomach turned. Serafina's voice rang sweetly. "Drink, little stray." Audrey's jaw tightened. "Say stray again." Serafina smiled. "Or what?" Sebastian's power answered before Audrey could. The torches flared. A shadow moved across Serafina's feet like a warning. Serafina's smile wavered. Audrey reached for the bowl first, refusing to be forced. Her fingers trembled as she lifted it. Scent hit her, iron, roses, and something ancient. She drank. The world tilted. For a second her vision went white, then flooded red. She felt every heartbeat in the room like drums. She felt every hungry gaze like claws. She swayed. Sebastian's gloved hand shot out fast, steady, catching her by the waist. He didn't let her fall. He pulled her closer, too close. Her breath stuck in her throat because she could feel the heat of him through his glove, through her dress, through every lie the court believed. Serafina's eyes widened with rage. "Do not touch her like that." Sebastian didn't look at Serafina. His mask tilted toward Audrey's neck. The court leaned in, hungry. The Chancellor's voice turned careful. "Your Majesty, the test requires proximity, touch, breath. If the marked survives your aura," Sebastian's voice was low. "She will." The Chancellor nodded once. "Then proceed." Sebastian's wheelchair rolled forward into the circle. The court's whispers died. Everyone watched for the moment the crippled king would feed, would snap, would prove the rumors true. Sebastian leaned toward Audrey slowly, deliberately, like he was making a point for the entire room. Audrey's skin prickled. Her mark burned. Serafina's nails dug into her own palms. "This is obscene." Sebastian lifted his hand and without warning slid his thumb under Audrey's chin, tilting her face toward him. Audrey's breath caught. Her heart slammed so hard it hurt. His mask was inches away. "Stay still," he murmured. The words were quiet, but the power behind them made Audrey's knees soften. Serafina's voice cracked. "She's a human." Sebastian's thumb stroked once, slow, possessive, like he wanted Serafina to see it. "Not to me." The court inhaled sharply. Audrey hated how her body reacted to his nearness, how her fear tangled with heat, how the mark pulsed like it recognized him. She whispered, "You're enjoying this." Sebastian's voice lowered, intimate. "I enjoy you resisting." Audrey's stomach flipped. "I'm not your toy," the mask tilted. "No," he murmured. "You're my problem." And then the test truly began. Sebastian leaned closer until his breath hit Audrey's throat, cold, sharp, and impossibly controlled. The red marble beneath them trembled faintly as shadows gathered like worshippers at the king's feet. Audrey's mark flared. Pain shot through her collarbone, down her spine, into her bones. She gasped and grabbed Sebastian's sleeve. The second her fingers touched him, the castle reacted. A deep roar shook the chamber, not a sound, a feeling. The iron chains rattled overhead. The nobles stumbled back, startled. Serafina's face went pale. The chancellor whispered, horrified, "The fortress, it's binding them." Audrey's vision blurred. Her legs threatened to give out. Sebastian's gloved hand tightened at her waist, holding her upright like he was keeping her alive through sheer will. "Look at me," he commanded. Audrey forced her eyes up. She couldn't see his eyes behind the dark lenses, but she felt them like pressure on her skin. "You won't break," he murmured. "Not in front of them." Audrey swallowed hard. "I might." "Then I'll hold you together." Serafina laughed, sharp with panic. "He's lying, he's manipulating her." Lord Kai's voice floated from the crowd, amused. "Or maybe he's finally found a weakness." That word weakness changed Sebastian's presence. The air chilled. The shadows thickened. Audrey felt it like a growl inside her ribs. Sebastian's head turned toward Kai's, slow and lethal. Kai's raised his hands in mock innocence. "All I'm saying is a king with a human bond is a king who can be controlled." The nobles murmured. Audrey realized the danger instantly. This wasn't romance. This wasn't scandal. This was political blood in the water. Serafina saw her chance and lunged for it. She stepped into the circle, voice loud and shaking. "If the bond is real, then prove it properly," she demanded. "Remove your mask, my king. Show your face to your bride." The room froze. Even the chancellor looked uneasy. Sebastian didn't move. Audrey felt his hand tighten around her, possessive, warning. Serafina's eyes glistened with humiliation. "You promised me," she whispered, but everyone heard. "You promised I would stand beside you." Sebastian's voice was calm. "You are standing." Serafina's composure snapped. Tears rose, not soft, furious. "As decoration." Audrey's chest tightened at the rawness in Serafina's voice. It wasn't kindness. It was hunger for power, but it was real. Serafina turned to Audrey, shaking with hate. "He will ruin you," she hissed. "He destroys what he touches." Audrey whispered back, "Then why are you still reaching?" Serafina's hand lifted fast, aiming for Audrey's mark. Sebastian moved. He didn't stand. He didn't need to. A shadow lashed out from behind the throne like a whip and slammed Serafina back, throwing her onto the red marble. The court screamed. Serafina lay there, stunned, hair spilled like silver blood. Her eyes filled with terror and fury. Sebastian's voice turned deadly soft. "Do not touch her." Serafina pushed herself up, shaking. "You just assaulted your bride." Sebastian leaned closer to Audrey again, his mask almost brushing her skin. "She isn't my bride," he said calmly. The words cut through the room. Serafina's face crumpled, then hardened into something vicious. Kai smiled like he'd been waiting for that sentence. The chancellor stepped forward quickly. "Your Majesty, careful. If Lady Serafina is no longer bride, then alliances shift." "Says will," Sebastian interrupted, voice sharp. "Let them." Audrey's heart pounded. This was bigger than her. This was war opening its mouth. Patricia's voice sliced in, delighted. "A king who abandons a noble bride for a marked human, how romantic." Audrey turned, fury rising. "Shut up." Patricia's smile widened. "You're learning, good." Jessica stood behind Patricia, trembling, eyes wet, collar shining. Audrey saw her sister's gaze flicker toward Audrey's mark with fear and shame. Audrey's stomach tightened. "What did you do to her?" Patricia sighed theatrically. "Prepared her for a better match." The court murmured. Sebastian's hand at Audrey's waist tightened again, and Audrey felt his anger spike, violent, controlled. Kai's voice purred. "We should end this. The mark is real, the court is destabilized. Chancellor, I propose a vote. If Blackwood insists on keeping the mark, we remove him." A collective inhale. Serafina's eyes snapped to Kai's. "You can't." Kai smiled at Serafina. "Watch me." The nobles began to whisper, shifting like sharks. Audrey felt fear try to swallow her. Sebastian leaned close, voice meant only for her. "This is where you choose," he murmured. "Victim or weapon?" Audrey's breath shook. "I don't know how." Sebastian's thumb brushed her pulse again. "You already did," he said. "You just haven't admitted it." The Chancellor raised his staff, voice booming. "The vote will be held at dawn. Until then the marked must remain under royal guard." Kai's cut in. "Under whose guard?" "Her king is unstable." Serafina stepped forward, eyes wild. "Give her to me," she snapped. "I will contain her." Audrey's blood went cold. Sebastian's voice turned like a knife. "You will not take her." Kai's smile sharpened. "Then prove you can protect her, crippled king." The crowd leaned in again. Sebastian's wheelchair rolled back slowly like he was retreating. Audrey's stomach dropped. But then she felt his hand slide behind her back, guiding her. A hidden door opened in the red marble wall. A private passage. Sebastian's voice low. "Walk." Audrey walked with him, heart hammering. Behind them the court erupted again, shouting about law, rebellion, and blood. Serafina screamed after them, voice breaking. "If you choose her, I will destroy her." Audrey didn't look back. The passage swallowed them into darkness. The moment the door sealed, the air changed, quieter, hotter, more dangerous. Sebastian's chair stopped. And then silence. Audrey turned toward him. "Stand up," she whispered. Sebastian didn't answer. Audrey stepped closer, close enough to touch the mask. "You're not broken," she said, voice shaking with anger. "You're performing." Sebastian's gloved hand caught her wrist midair, stopping her from pulling the mask off. His grip was iron, his voice dropped, no synthesizer now, real deep velvet over steel. "You want truth," he murmured. "Then don't blink." Audrey's breath stopped, because the wheelchair's blanket shifted, and Sebastian's feet touched the floor. He rose, tall, perfect. Alive, Audrey stumbled back, shock hitting her like a wave. Sebastian stepped toward her, closing the distance until she hit the cold stone wall. His hand braced beside her head. His eyes, storm gray, locked onto hers. "You're shaking," he said softly. Audrey swallowed. "Because you lied." Sebastian leaned closer, voice intimate, dangerous. "I lied to survive." Audrey whispered. "Then what am I to you?" Sebastian's gaze dropped to her mark, which pulsed like it wanted him. His jaw tightened like he was holding himself back. "You're the one thing I didn't plan," he murmured. "And I hate how much I want you." Audrey's breath caught. Serafina's threat echoed in her mind. Kai's vote, Patricia's smile, Jessica's collar, the world was closing in. Sebastian's hand slid from the wall to Audrey's throat, light touch, claiming without harm. "Dawn comes," he said. "They'll try to take you." Audrey whispered, "Let them." Sebastian's eyes flashed possessive heat. "No." His power surged, shadows rippling behind him like wings. "And if you try to run," he murmured, mouth near her ear, "I will hunt you first." Audrey shivered, hate and heat twisting together. Outside the passage, distant alarms rang through the palace, court guards moving, nobles gathering, war approaching. Sebastian stepped back just enough to look at her fully. "You survived Dawn," he said, "and the court will kneel." Audrey swallowed hard. "How?" Sebastian's smile was slow, dangerous. "By becoming what they fear." He reached into his coat and pulled out a small black ring, old and heavy, engraved with the same wolf and bat circle as her mark. He held it up between them. "Wear it," he said. Audrey stared. "That's not marriage," she whispered. Sebastian stepped closer again, eyes burning. "It's ownership," he said softly, "and it's protection." Audrey's pulse raced. In her mind, Serafina's voice screamed, "I will destroy her." Kai's smile promised, "I will remove him." Patricia's eyes said, "I arranged all of this." Audrey took the ring with shaking fingers. The second her skin touched it, the mark flared, and somewhere deep in the palace, something ancient roared awake. Sebastian's gaze flicked up, satisfied, almost hungry. "Good," he murmured. "Now we make them bleed politely." Dawn didn't arrive like light, it arrived like judgment. The royal court reconvened in the grand hall, but the glamour was gone. No music, no laughter, just armed guards, tense nobles, and the smell of fear hidden under perfume. Sebastian was back in the wheelchair. Mask on, tragedy restored. But Audrey knew the truth now, and the truth made the performance terrifying. She stood beside him again, this time wearing the black ring. Serafina stood across the hall in white, eyes red-rimmed, expression too sharp to be sane. She looked like an angel ready to bite. Lord Kai stood beside the Chancellor with the confidence of a man already holding a knife behind his back. Patricia sat in the front row like she was watching theater. Jessica stood behind her like a puppet, ruby collar gleaming, hands trembling. The Chancellor raised his staff. The vote begins. Those who believe King Blackwood has violated the truce step forward. 3 nobles moved instantly. Then 5, then 10, a slow tide. Audrey's stomach tightened. Kai's smile widened. Unstable, he announced. A king bound to a human is compromised. Sebastian's synthesized voice rumbled. Say what you want, Kais, you're still alive, Kais laughed. Only because you've been hiding behind tragedy. Serafina stepped forward suddenly, voice shaking with fury. He's a fraud, she snapped. He lied about weakness, he lied about devotion, he lied to me, the court murmured. Serafina's eyes locked on Audrey. And she, Serafina hissed, pointing, is a parasite wearing my crown. Audrey's jaw tightened. You don't own him. Serafina's laugh turned sharp. I own the alliances he needs. The Chancellor looked uneasy. Lady Serafina's house controls the Eastern trade. Her marriage, Sebastian interrupted, calm as death, was never real. Serafina flinched like he slapped her. The humiliation hit her face hard. Her eyes flooded again, not with softness, rage. Kai stepped closer, voice smooth. Then we remove him, and we take the marked girl into custody. Her bond sigil is a weapon, and weapons belong to the council. The word custody made Audrey's blood freeze. Sebastian's gloved hand moved slightly on the armrest. Audrey felt it, his restraint thin as a wire. Serafina leaned toward the Chancellor, desperate and volatile. Give her to me, she whispered loudly. I will break her bond. I will restore order. Patricia smiled. Kais nodded approvingly. Audrey realized the trap instantly. They didn't just want Sebastian removed. They wanted Audrey separated from him, because the castle reacted to her, because his power reacted to her, because together they were something the court couldn't control. The Chancellor lifted his staff. By ancient law, if the marked is deemed a political destabilizer, the council may claim her. Audrey's throat tightened. She looked at Sebastian's mask. She couldn't see his face, but she felt his attention like a hand around her spine. Don't panic, his synthesized voice murmured. Audrey whispered back, they're going to take me. Sebastian's voice lowered. Let them try. Kais raised his hand. Council guards. 2 armored guards approached Audrey. Serafina's lips parted into a shaking smile. Good, she breathed. Bring her here. Audrey's mark burned. The ring felt heavy. The guards reached for her and Sebastian's power snapped. Not violence, not yet. A visible ripple of darkness rolled across the marble floor, stopping the guards mid-step like they hit an invisible wall. The chandeliers flickered. The court gasped. The guards struggled, muscles straining, but they couldn't move. Sebastian's wheelchair rolled forward slowly, controlled. His synthesized voice filled the hall. She stays. Kai's smile turned cold. Defying the council is treason. Sebastian tilted his masked face. So is poisoning kings. The hall froze. Kai's eyes narrowed. Careful. Sebastian's voice went quieter, sharper. 5 years ago, my father died choking at your table. The nobles murmured, shocked. Kai spread his hands. A myth. Sebastian's gloved hand lifted and pointed, not at Kai's, at Patricia. Audrey's stomach dropped. Ask your ally, Sebastian said. Ask the woman who sold her stepdaughter to distract me. Patricia's smile faltered for the first time. Serafina's head snapped toward Patricia. What? Kai's gaze flicked, irritated. Patricia recovered quickly, laughing lightly. Your Majesty is emotional. He blames everyone. Sebastian's voice cut through her. Where is the locket, Patricia? Patricia's eyes flashed. Audrey's heart pounded. Sebastian continued, voice steady. Where is the map? The entire court shifted. Map, locket. The whispers grew sharper. Kai spoke quickly, trying to regain control. Irrelevant, we are voting on removal. Sebastian's wheelchair stopped in the center of the hall. He turned toward Audrey slightly, and his voice softened just enough to feel intimate even behind the synthesizer. Show them, he murmured. Audrey's breath caught. Show them what? Sebastian's gloved hand opened, palm up, toward her, an invitation, a demand, a claim. Serafina watched, trembling with jealousy. Kais watched, calculating. Patricia watched, suddenly wary. Audrey stepped forward and placed her hand in Sebastian's. The moment skin met glove, the entire hall reacted. The shadows climbed the pillars like living smoke. The chandeliers dimmed, then flared. The marble floor vibrated. A low sound rolled through the palace like an ancient creature waking up. The court stumbled back in fear. The chancellor whispered, voice breaking. "The fortress, it's bowing." Serafina looked like she couldn't breathe. "No. That's not." Audrey's mark burned bright under her collarbone, visible even from the front row. The ring on her finger pulsed faintly. Kai's smile disappeared, because for the first time he understood this wasn't just a bond, this was a coronation in motion. Serafina snapped, losing control fully. "She's a human," she screamed. "She's nothing." Audrey looked at Serafina calmly. "Then why are you afraid of me?" Serafina's hands shook. Her voice went shrill. "Because he's obsessed." Sebastian's voice dropped and the whole hall heard it. "I am." Serafina staggered back like punched. Patricia's eyes widened. Kai's jaw tightened. Audrey's heart slammed, heat rising to her face, anger and thrill colliding. Sebastian's wheelchair rolled closer to Audrey until she stood directly beside the throne again. He turned his mask toward the chancellor. "Your vote is meaningless," Sebastian said calmly, "because the old laws you worship already decided." The chancellor stammered, "Your Majesty, the council." Sebastian cut him off. "The council cannot claim what the fortress has claimed." Kai's voice sharpened. "Then prove it. Remove your mask, stand, show the court you aren't weak." A deadly silence. Sebastian paused. Audrey felt his hand tighten around hers. A warning, a question. Serafina's eyes gleamed with desperate hope. If Sebastian stood, the truce might shatter. If the truce shattered, his enemies could legally slaughter him in this hall. Kai's wanted that. Serafina wanted that. Patricia wanted that. Audrey understood in a single breath. If Sebastian revealed the truth now, they would all attack. Sebastian leaned slightly toward Audrey, voice low enough to feel like a secret. "They want me to bleed," he murmured. "What do you want?" Audrey's throat tightened. She remembered being sold. She remembered the collar on Jessica. She remembered Serafina calling her a stray. She remembered Kai smiling while talking about removing her like property. Audrey lifted her chin. "I want them to kneel," she whispered. Sebastian's stillness deepened. Then slowly, so the whole room watched, Sebastian rose from the wheelchair. One smooth motion, no struggle, no weakness. A king standing tall. The hall erupted in screams and gasps. Nobles stumbled backward, guards raised weapons. The chancellor dropped his staff for a heartbeat. Serafina went pale, lips shaking. You can walk." Kai's face tightened with pure hatred. Sebastian reached up and removed his mask. His face was not ruined. It was devastatingly whole, sharp cheekbones, storm-gray eyes, a mouth that looked like it was built for promises and punishments. He looked at the court, calm. Then he looked at Audrey, and his expression shifted just slightly, as if only she could pull humanity out of a monster. Serafina made a strangled sound. "That was supposed to be mine." Sebastian didn't glance at her. He stepped closer to Audrey until he was behind her, chest near her back, presence swallowing her like night. His hand slid to her waist, possessive, controlled, protective. The court watched, horrified. Kai snapped, "Guards," but the guards hesitated because the fortress was still humming, because the shadows were still moving, because the palace itself felt like it was choosing. Sebastian spoke, voice real, loud enough to cut through the hall. "This court will not vote on my throne," he said. "It will witness it." He guided Audrey one step forward, placing her in front of him like a crown. The chancellor's voice shook. "Marked one, what do you claim?" Audrey's heartbeat thundered. Serafina stared at her with pure murderous jealousy. Kai stared like he was counting ways to kill her. Patricia stared like her plan had grown teeth. Jessica stared through tears, finally awake enough to understand she was watching the world change. Audrey raised her hand, showing the black ring, and she spoke clearly, easy English, every word sharp. "I claim my life back." Sebastian's mouth curved slightly. He leaned down, lips near Audrey's ear. Then he said the line that snapped the world into a new shape, one unforgettable sentence. "Stand by me and I will make you feared." Audrey turned her head just enough to meet his eyes, and she answered loud enough for the court to hear. "I don't want safety, I want power." The fortress roared, not a sound, an agreement. The shadows surged up the pillars like saluting soldiers. The chandeliers burned brighter. The court fell to its knees in a wave, forced down by ancient pressure. Even Serafina's legs buckled. Even Kai stepped back, face white with rage, because for the first time in years, Sebastian wasn't hiding, and Audrey wasn't prey. Sebastian's hands tightened at her waist. His voice turned soft, dangerous, possessive. "This is my wife," he announced. "Anyone who touches her dies." Serafina lifted her head from the floor, tears streaking her face, hatred burning. "This isn't over," she whispered. Kai's smile returned, thin and deadly. "No," he agreed softly. "It's just beginning." Audrey felt the warning in those words like a knife sliding under her ribs, but she didn't flinch. She stood inside Sebastian's arms, wearing the ring, mark burning like a crown, and stared down at the kneeling court. Sebastian murmured one last line, quiet, final, redefining everything between them. "You're not my prisoner anymore, you're my rule." And that was the power shift, not romance, not rescue. Rule. The court stayed on its knees. Serafina shook with rage. Kai's eyes promised war. Patricia's smile vanished into calculation. Jessica cried silently, free and broken at once. Audrey breathed in, slow, steady. She had entered the palace as a sold girl. She stood now as the reason a king stopped pretending. And somewhere deep in the fortress, something ancient whispered the same truth. She belonged to the night, on her own terms. If you enjoyed this dark fantasy twist and want more intense stories like this, check out my other videos on the channel. Each one is darker, sharper, and more addictive than the last. Like, subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next betrayal. Because in my stories, love doesn't save you. It changes what you're willing to destroy.